Vegan products, where would we be without them? They make our lives as vegans that much more interesting, delicious, and convenient. And while of course we don't need them, there's something that many of us enjoy and have come to rely on as part of our routines. But what happens when that reliability is no longer there? When that trust gets broken? When companies we loved because their values seem to align with ours prove that that wasn't really the case? And why does it happen? Today we'll look at several food brands that fall in this category of no longer being vegan. This is something that's been on my mind for a while because it's been happening for years now, but there were a few recent instances that made me feel like now's the time to make this video. Because I'm pretty fired up about a few of them, if I'm being completely honest. Some of these are ones that you may already know about and not be surprised by, but some of them are actually pretty surprising, at least to me. While this is undeniably kind of a depressing topic, I promise there are a few glimmers of hope in here, so stick with me and we'll get into all of it. Before we get into the case studies, I want to make a distinction because I feel like there's a few different categories of vegan companies. There's companies with vegan ethics, and then there's companies whose products all happen to be vegan. There's also another category of companies that seemed to fall into that first vegan ethics category, but then sold to a company that doesn't share those same ethics, and that's a whole other category that we'll get into a little later. With some of these, it's pretty clear which is which. With others, it's harder to tell. Let's start with a big one that was a real heartbreak. It was a big story a few years ago, which is the story of Coconut Bliss, or as they're now known, Cosmic Bliss. For those unfamiliar, Coconut Bliss was a long-time vegan ice cream company, and to be honest, I didn't actually realize how long they had been around. So they actually first came out in 2005, which makes sense for me timing-wise because I first went vegan in 2007, and this is a slight tangent, but it's kind of funny. When I first went vegan, I remember there being so many different ice cream companies with almost identical names but slightly different, and I'm like, was I just imagining that, or was that really the case? And so I pulled out my handy dandy vegan Bible from the time, Skinny Bitch, which if you've been around for a long time, you know my history with Skinny Bitch, and I found some answers to my questions. Okay, so there was So Delicious, which used to be called Soy Delicious. There was also Soy Dream, Coconut Dream, and Coconut Bliss. We're all about the soy and coconut back then. And I know some of these were probably owned by the same company, or it was a transition from one name to another, but still kind of funny that there were so many ice creams with such similar names. But back to Coconut Bliss, my memory was really jogged when I saw their earlier packaging, which was pretty different from their later packaging. I'm like, yes, this is the Coconut Bliss I remember. And they didn't just make pints, they also made novelty desserts like ice cream bars and sandwiches. So everyone was shocked when in 2022 they announced they would be incorporating grass-fed dairy into some of their products while keeping others plant-based. Now, why exactly did they decide to do this? Coconut Bliss is owned by a company called HumanCo, and the CEO of HumanCo, Jason Karp, apparently did some research into the ice cream segment, which revealed to him just how few people regularly buy and consume plant-based ice cream. More than 97% of all ice cream sold in the US is dairy-based, he said. So I was kind of wondering, like, what is HumanCo, and was Jason Karp the founder of Coconut Bliss? I did some digging, and no, it turns out HumanCo acquired a majority stake in Coconut Bliss in 2020, which sort of paints a fuller picture, right? Like acquired in 2020, major change in 2022. I actually found a very interesting connection between HumanCo and Jason Karp and another company we'll be talking about later in the video, so we'll get to that. Food Dive points out that it's an unconventional change at a time when many manufacturers are working to produce better plant-based options. But Karp said it's HumanCo's way of trying to meet all consumers where they are. We believe that it was a better strategy to try to provide a better solution for the 97% than try to force everybody into a one-size-fits-all kind of mentality, Karp said. That's the why. Is it just me, or is he sounding a little defensive? So I don't know where that more than 97% figure comes from. Like, I'm sure he did his research, but plant-based ice cream seems to be doing really well. The global dairy-free ice cream market size was valued at $1.05 billion in 2024 and is projected to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 15.3% from 2025 to 2030. So the decision was obviously pretty baffling. There was a lot of outrage, especially in the vegan community. But what I found interesting, going even further back, the original Coconut Bliss owners sold to a dairy company called Lochmead Dairy in 2011, and it was Lochmead who later sold the majority stake to HumanCo. So it's interesting, Coconut Bliss was owned by a dairy company since 2011, but I don't think most of us knew that, and so in our minds, we always considered this to be a vegan company. So it brings up this interesting question, like, if a vegan company is owned by a non-vegan company, are they still considered vegan? And again, we will get more into that later. Let's move on to another one that was a very recent unpleasant shock to me, which is Spudsy. Some of you know I have talked about Spudsy quite a bit on my channel, but I will give a little backstory for those who are unfamiliar. Spudsy is a snack company that launched in 2018 and are known for their sweet potato puffs. And all of their products, up until recently, were vegan. Around 2020, I started getting messages from people telling me about them due to their interesting vegan flavors, specifically sour cream and onion and vegan buffalo ranch. It's something I had talked about on my channel quite a bit, how underutilized I feel sour cream and onion is in vegan snacking. And then everyone knows I love buffalo. So this was just like, these were like my dream vegan snack flavors. I had a hard time finding those flavors specifically, but I eventually got to try them on a work trip, which I vlogged, so you can check that out up here if you'd like. Do a little experiment. For research purposes, for research. In general, I loved them. I thought they were really unique. Sure, they were puffs, which are kind of a common snack, but they were sweet potato puffs, which I thought was a little different. And I liked their mission of reducing food waste. Their whole thing was about upcycling sweet potatoes, and they've apparently saved over 2 million sweet potatoes from ending up in landfills to date. So I was all in. Like, I did get, admittedly, a little sick of them because I ate them so much. So I was like buying them basically whenever I saw them. They also launched fries, which I was super excited to try, specifically their hot fries, but they weren't very good. I feel like all these companies just keep launching the exact same type of fry product, you know, where it's like that like rectangular shape and then there's a little hole on each end and they're hollow and they're just kind of like feel very non-substantial. When you're hoping it'll be Andy Capp's hot fries and instead you get veggie straws, it's just not very satisfying. They also launched poppers and scoops, which were pretty good, but the puffs were definitely my favorite. And lately, I haven't been seeing them in stores as much. So recently, I was at a Whole Foods that used to carry all their flavors. And I had an unfortunate situation recently where I accidentally purchased a snack that wasn't vegan because I got confused by the packaging. I ranted to the patrons about it on the Discord, but basically it kind of had me feeling like, I think I only want to support vegan snack companies moving forward. So I'm here at Whole Foods and I'm looking through the things. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna buy Spudsy. But I didn't see any puffs. And I was like, oh, weird. They don't, like, can't even find the puffs now at this store where I could always find the puffs. Then I do see that they have this product called cheese fries, which I had never seen before. So I was like, oh, this must be a new flavor. And again, not crazy about the fries, but I was like, I'll try the new flavor, you know? Didn't even look at the label because again, in my mind, this is a completely vegan company and I don't think I have anything to worry about. So I get to my car and these were my chosen car snack, thankfully, because I start looking at the bag and I see that the little cartoon sweet potato on the bag has a little speech bubble coming out of his mouth that says, "Real cheese flavor." And I'm like, the fuck? I turn the bag over and lo and behold, it has dairy in it. So I was really shocked, upset, confused, feeling gaslit, all these things. I'm like, what the hell? I thought this was a vegan company. Thankfully, I was able to return them from Whole Foods, get a different snack. Then I found a Reddit thread which confirmed that Spudsy, did used to be fully vegan and that they now were not. People were upset as I was. So I ended up writing to Spudsy just to try and get some answers. Like, I wasn't trying to get a coupon or anything. No, I really wasn't. And I wrote to a few of these companies, but Spudsy was actually the only one to get back to me as of now. And here's what they said. Hi, Marielle. Thank you for sharing this feedback, and I will certainly share this with our team. We've always been dedicated to creating delicious snacks that everyone can enjoy. While our entire range has always been vegan, we've recently introduced a cheddar fry made with real cheddar to expand our offerings to a broader audience. Our goal is to craft snacks that satisfy all tastes without compromising on quality or flavor. Rest assured, our beloved vegan snacks will always be available, and we'll continue to innovate with options for everyone to enjoy. Your plant-based favorites are here to stay, except for your 2 favorite flavors, which have sadly been discontinued. We also want to share that Spudsy is now under new ownership. Thanks so much for loving our snacks as much as we do. What is your mailing address? We would love to send you some coupons. Thanks. Mission accomplished. Okay, so here we again have what seems to be an emerging pattern, the new ownership kiss of death. Or should we say kiss of dairy. It turns out that late last year, Spudsy was acquired by a company called UpSnack Brands. So it seems like the CEO of Pipcorn launched this new entity called UpSnack Brands, which acquired Pipcorn and Spudsy. As we know, Pipcorn is not a vegan company, so I have to assume this new cheese fry decision came after the acquisition. The description for the cheese fries on their website says, "After popular demand, we created a real cheddar fries you've been craving." Aside from that sentence not making any grammatical sense, I also want to touch on this something everyone can enjoy reasoning. So you wanted to create something that everyone could enjoy and therefore introduced a product that your core consumer base would not be able to enjoy. This notion that not everyone can enjoy vegan snacks or vegan food in general is one of my pet peeves and is something that is really ridiculous to me. And I've been thinking about this recently. I got a comment that was something like, why do vegans feel entitled to be catered to despite being such a small percentage of the population? And yes, people who identify as vegans are a small percentage, but vegetarians eat lots of vegan food. When I was vegetarian, I bought vegan products and ate at vegan restaurants and ate vegan food all the time. There's also flexitarians, people who are lactose intolerant or lactose sensitive or just enjoy eating vegan snacks for whatever reason. So vegans aren't the only consumers for vegan snacks, but vegan snacks are the only products that some people can eat. And with Spudsy, I'm just like, was your vegan cheddar seasoning really that bad that you had to introduce a real cheddar seasoning? Because I've had the Spudsy vegan cheddar seasoning and it's pretty fucking good. Not as good as the sour cream and onion and the buffalo ranch, but even so. Obviously, this is just one product. The rest of their products are still vegan, but it's not a good sign, right? Like, it doesn't feel great to see things moving in this direction. Let's move on to another interesting one, a very recent one, and this one was Impossible Foods. Now, there's a very big disclaimer here that some vegans don't consider Impossible to be a vegan brand to begin with, due to their animal testing of the ingredient heme iron, which they were required by the FDA to do in order to get approval to sell in the US. The founder wrote a blog post at the time about that decision, and he ends the post with, "We hope we will never have to face such a choice again, but choosing the option that advances the greater good is more important to us than ideological purity." Everyone has their own opinion on whether or not they consider Impossible to be vegan. I'd say most vegans I know consider them to be vegan and eat their products. I consider them to be vegan and eat their products, but I know not everyone feels the same. But here's a question. Does Impossible consider themselves to be vegan? From the beginning, Impossible made it clear that they were trying to cater to meat eaters and not to vegans.
The only consumer we care about is an omnivore, a meat consumer.
In this blog post about whether their products are vegan, they say, "It's important to let you know that our mission is to save our planet from the catastrophic effects of the animal agricultural industry. Each time someone chooses meat from plants over meat from animals, they use less water and land and generate less greenhouse gases. That's a huge win for the planet." So it gives off a very plant-based for environmental reasons message, but the post does also say their products don't contain any animal ingredients. And that's how it's always been. Every Impossible Foods product I've come across has never had animal ingredients. That's why I was super surprised to see this post on Reddit warning people about this seemingly new product, which is an impossible breakfast sandwich containing chicken, egg, and dairy cheese. Now, while we would expect animal ingredients in things like the Starbucks Impossible Breakfast Sandwich or the Burger King Impossible Whopper, as far as I can tell, this is the first time Impossible are putting their name on a packaged product that contains animal ingredients. And it's a bit confusing because this product actually isn't on the Impossible website, but it is on the Kroger and Misfits Market websites. And it's just weird, like my first thought when I see the picture is, oh, that's probably, just egg and Violife cheese. And in fact, this comment points out that's what the Peet's Coffee Impossible Breakfast Sandwich is. On the one hand, it's not surprising to see a company who has said over and over again, we're not a vegan company, we're not catering to vegans, using animal ingredients. On the other hand, it is kind of surprising to see a company who says their mission is to save our planet from the catastrophic effects of the animal agricultural industry using animal products that very much contribute to those catastrophic effects. While their mission statement is it's all about the environment, the 2017 blog post from the founder about the lab testing starts with, the core of Impossible Foods' mission is to eliminate exploitation of animals in the food system, along with reducing environmental harm. So there is some sort of purported animal ethical reasoning here from the founder himself, but is that just because he knew he was in hot water about the lab testing, so he was kind of trying to play up the ethical side a little more? Either way, I found it very disappointing that they're now officially selling animal foods, and it's I hope this is just some weird mistake or something. It probably won't feel real until I actually see it on their website. I did reach out to them, I haven't heard back, so I'll let you guys know if that changes. But let's move on to another one that I know people were upset about, which was Hu Kitchen. They're most known for their dark chocolate bars. They have many delicious flavors like hazelnut butter, orange vanilla cashew butter, crunchy mint. They also used to sell snacks, definitely crackers. I can't remember what else, but they have discontinued those. Their entire product line was vegan, and they really lean into the simplicity of the ingredients in their marketing. I knew about Hu Kitchen pretty early on because they had a cafe in New York that Paul would go to, and they first sold their chocolate in the restaurant. So Paul was introduced to it that way, he introduced me to it, we both loved it. And they've expanded a ton since then to the point where their chocolates are available in most major retailers. However, back in 2022, Hu announced they were unveiling a grass-fed milk chocolate line. I don't really remember this happening, I don't really remember the backlash. I do sort of recall at one point in a store seeing milk chocolate grass-fed on their label and being that's weird. But like I said, I don't remember a ton of the backlash. Just a funny side note, there's a vegan chocolate place in Connecticut. It's called Divine Treasures. It's been around for 20 years. It's completely vegan and gluten-free, and they specialize in European dark chocolate. Paul and I went recently and it was amazing. You can actually order their chocolates online, so check it out if you're looking for some good vegan chocolate. But I asked the girl working there if they would ever consider making a vegan milk chocolate, and she was like, well, technically milk chocolate is a candy, not a chocolate. And I was like, oh shit. But yeah, it makes me want to say to Hu Kitchen, technically your grass-fed milk chocolate is candy, not chocolate. Anyway, I had it in my mind that the Hu Kitchen restaurant had been vegan, but that actually is not the case. The Hu Kitchen restaurant was paleo, and while they did have a few vegan things on the menu, they definitely served meat too. So it's interesting, why make their packaged line vegan in the first place? It's kind of giving, they thought they could make more money making the whole line vegan, but then now they're realizing they could make more money adding grass-fed milk to it. So unsurprisingly, they were also acquired by a company called Mondelēz in 2021. Mondelēz is a snacking company with tons of brands under their umbrella, and I would say very much junk food brands like Chips Ahoy, Ritz, and Oreo. So the acquisition was in 2021, and they introduced the milk line in 2022. Again, another acquisition followed by a de-veganizing overhaul. Here's what I found interesting though. Hu Kitchen was founded by 3 people. one of whom is Jason Karp, the founder and CEO of HumanCo, who, if you'll recall, acquired Coconut Bliss in 2020 and gave the lovely, not defensive at all quote about his decision to add grass-fed dairy to their line. So it's just interesting that we have these two different instances of vegan companies deciding to add grass-fed milk to their products, and Jason Karp is involved in both of those instances. And they both happen the same year. So that's actually something that made me feel a little better, because sometimes it can kind of feel like this domino effect of like, oh my gosh, all these vegan companies are abandoning their morals. But knowing that it was sort of like the same person behind both decisions and them happening in the same year, it makes it feel more like one bad decision rather than two. Does that make any sense? And the Hugh Kitchen story overall I find less surprising, because this was never a vegan company to begin with. It was a paleo company, and it kind of just felt like a coincidence or maybe a cash grab that their line happened to be vegan. In that context, it seems pretty silly to get upset over them adding milk to some of their products. You know, like, company that was never really vegan continues to not be vegan. A company I was surprised about, though, is Vegan Robs. Now, nobody freak out, I have no evidence that Vegan Robs isn't vegan anymore, but I found something kind of interesting that I think is worth discussing. I love the backstory of Vegan Robs. I'll give a quick overview for anyone who doesn't know. Vegan Robs is a snack company most known for their cauliflower puffs, and I didn't know this until I made the Vegan in the 2000s video. I get into more detail about it here. That Rob of Vegan Robs previously had a company called Robert's American Gourmet, which was the original makers of Pirate's Booty, which wasn't vegan, but also Veggie Booty and Tings, which were vegan. And Tings were one of the most popular, beloved vegan snacks of the 2000s. All that to say, Rob was really kind of a vegan snack pioneer, and shortly after he sold Pirate's Booty, he launched Vegan Robs. Vegan Robs has had a ton of different products over the years, different veggie puffs like cauliflower, jackfruit, moringa, and beet. They also had these chips that were kind of like Pringles, which were so good. Sadly, they seem to have discontinued them. Over the last couple of years, they seem to have really pared down their offerings, which worried me. But that brings me to my point in bringing all of this up. As I said, in an effort to support the fully vegan snack companies, when I was at the health food store recently, I was like, let me get the beet puffs. I hadn't had them in a while, and I didn't look too closely at the package. I was pretty confident that I didn't need to. And I get home later, I'm eating them, they're delicious, like I forgot how delicious they are. And I was thinking to myself, it's so nice that I don't even have to think about checking the ingredients, because the company is literally called Vegan Robs. And then as I'm thinking that, I'm literally holding the bag and I look at the bag and I go, huh? Because it doesn't say Vegan Robs on the bag, it says Veggie Robs. I was incredibly confused because Paul had bought a bag of the cauliflower puffs and those said Vegan Robs. So my first thought was, are they changing the name of the company and I just have a newer package and he has an older one? But their website still says Vegan Robs. I have emailed them, I've reached out to them on Instagram, I haven't heard back. So I was and still am incredibly confused by this. This is a brand that always was and still is vegan, but I find it interesting that if they are doing a name change, even the proudly vegan brands are sort of moving away from the vegan label. In addition to all these case studies, we also have the instances of the vegan brands that are owned by non-vegan companies, which is a lot of them. Like if you look at this list, this is most of the mainstream vegan products available in most stores. Which is not a coincidence, right? Like we're probably seeing them in so many stores because they are owned by these huge companies. There is a lot of discussion and debate within the vegan community whether a vegan company like Daiya that sells to a non-vegan company, like a pharmaceutical company, is still considered vegan. We've seen, especially with the Miyoko situation, how nearly impossible it is for smaller companies to survive within the food landscape in the US especially. A lot of times these companies don't really have a choice. If they want to grow, scale, and reach more consumers, oftentimes the only option is to sell. And unfortunately, there aren't many vegan food conglomerates, but there is at least one. There's a company called Ahimsa, which was started in 2024, and they acquired Wicked Kitchen, as well as Simulate, the company that makes nugs, and Blackbird Kitchen. And the Blackbird Kitchen acquisition was less than 2 months ago, so this is seemingly very much unfolding. Ahimsa seems to be in the process of acquiring even more vegan brands. They have a dedicated vegan manufacturing facility in the US. Now, is Ahimsa just another group of venture capitalists who couldn't care less about veganism and just want to make money? Possibly. In an interview with the CEO, Matt Tullman, he was pretty evasive about who the investors are, but he himself has been involved in a number of plant-based companies over the years, so there's at least a history of interest. And honestly, I'll take this as progress. Like, I'm actually really happy to see this. It at least feels like Ahimsa is a company that's taking a clear stand, and therefore it feels a lot less likely that the companies under them will just randomly be like, let's add grass-fed milk to our products. But zooming out a little, I want to talk about the general issues I have with these no longer vegan companies. Like, why does any of this matter? Why does it bother me? Why is it problematic? Firstly, I think it's the consumer trust issue. As vegans, we have trust issues. The number of times we've been lied to, or been accidentally, or maybe even purposely served things that weren't vegan. The number of times we've purchased a product in the store completely confident that it's vegan, because why wouldn't it be, only to find out that it has some hidden dairy ingredient in it. So when we find a company where all their products are vegan, it takes away some of that angst. Like, we can let our guard down a little bit. We don't have to be obsessively ingredient studying. Therefore, it is doubly disappointing when they pull a change like that, because we trusted them. And people might say, like, well, do you buy any products from non-vegan companies? And I'd say, yes, sometimes I do. And then they might say, well, then what's the problem? To me, it's a similar problem to when vegan restaurants add non-vegan foods to their menus. Like, it's one thing for a non-vegan entity to start adding vegan products to their menu and expand their offerings. Like, that's something that we want to encourage and reward. But a company that seemed to care about catering to us, seemed to align with our values, seemed to market specifically to us to get us to trust them and spend our money with them, a company like that adding animal products feels more like a betrayal. It feels more like a cash grab, a loss of integrity. It's harder to respect them. It's harder to want to give them our money. I guess more simply put, it's a question of wanting to reward companies that feel like they're moving in the right direction and not wanting to reward the ones who feel like they're moving in the wrong direction. All of this got me thinking, what is a vegan company? How do we define that? Does it just mean that none of the products they sell contain animal-derived ingredients? Does it mean they have made some type of statement proclaiming vegan values? I recently purchased Mrs. Goldfarb's Unreal Deli corned beef. I had previously purchased their bacon. I have loved all the products of theirs I've tried so far. I'm so excited that I'm starting to see them more places. On the corned beef box, there is a drawing of a cow and it says no animals were harmed. There's also something on the box about saving animal lives. That type of messaging certainly makes me feel like they are ethically aligned with my values. But with companies like Spudsy or Coconut Bliss, where all of their products happen to be vegan, do we have a right to be upset when they start selling animal products? We obviously have a right to feel however we want, to spend our money however we want, but is it logical? Is it actually helping the cause? I don't know. These are all things that I am just thinking about and wondering about, and I'm also wondering how you guys feel about it. Of course, I feel it's great to support completely vegan companies and small companies whenever we can. Mrs. Goldfarb's, Upton's, Treeline, Vegan Robs / Veggie Robs, whatever they're called, Elmhurst. These are all companies I know are completely vegan and I believe are independently owned. But please share others that you know of in the comments. Make sure to specify which country you're in. And let me know what you think of everything I covered in this video. It's undeniably kind of a depressing topic, but I do feel there are some glimmers of hope, so I hope you felt that way too. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more, check out Patreon for exclusive content like bi-weekly videos and podcast episodes, as well as Discord access. Thank you to the Fancy Forks, Claudia, Dindin Masker, and Big Chungus 4526. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!